Then in terms of the time limit of the window, that is in some way a red herring in this debate, because the time limit won't matter for those who simply don't qualify for an alternative visa.
Approximately 178,000 Zimbabwean nationals who have applied for residency in South Africa under the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit, the ZDP, could face the removal of their right to live in South Africa with devastating consequences for themselves and their families. One organization that is fighting this is the Helen Suzman Foundation. They are taking the Department of Home Affairs to court. Joining me to discuss the details of this court case is senior legal researcher at the Helen Suzman Foundation, Chris Fisher. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Chris, could you tell us details of this case? How did this come about? What is the background context to this decision by the Department of Home Affairs?
Well, the background context is essentially the Minister of Home Affairs' decision to cancel the Zimbabwean Exemption Permit. And the decision came to us in various forms, beginning in late 2021, and then following some court action in late 2021, got reformulated into a series of public notices that expressed the minister's decision early this year. And what the minister did in those notices early this year is communicate the idea that the ZDP has been terminated, and that erstwhile holders of the ZDP permit will now have to regularize themselves under the mainstream visa program under the Immigration Act. And he's given initially he gave a 12-month grace period to do that. And then presumably under some pressure, he extended that by an extra 6 months. So what was going to be a December 2022 expiry for the ZDP has now been pushed to a June 2023 expiry for the ZDP. And our court action is aimed at challenging that decision, the extension notwithstanding. Even with the extension, the minister has made this decision without any consultation with the ZDP holders themselves, nor with the South African public at large. And this sort of decision has got such incredible impact on the, as you mentioned, 178,000 holders, but also the families that come along with those permit holders, and for the many of South Africans who depend on those ZDP permit holders. So what's really happened here is that the minister has made a decision that is unfair in that it hasn't given the people who it affects any seat at the table, and he's produced an uninformed decision because he is completely unaware of the impact of that decision on the ZDP holders and the South Africans that depend on him. So for roughly those reasons, we believe the decision is unlawful and should be set aside.
Okay, so the withdrawal of the ZDP would mean, as a former ZDP holder, you would either have to return back to Zimbabwe, or you'd have to apply for residency under the Immigration Act. But then you would have to prove that you have scarce skills, that the job that you're looking to perform can't be done by a South African. So that's a pretty high hurdle, and essentially de facto would mean that you'd be forced to return back to Zimbabwe. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it is a fair assessment. The minister makes a great deal about the opportunity for ZDP holders to regularize themselves under the Immigration Act with an alternative visa. But that does ignore the fact that you raised, David, that many of the holders of the ZDP holders by definition would not qualify for a mainstream visa. The ZDP program and its predecessors were brought in precisely because the population of Zimbabweans who had fled the economic and the political turmoil in their home country were trying to accommodate themselves under the asylum system, and there just wasn't capacity there. So this exemption was created for a class of people who would not qualify for an ordinary visa under the Immigration Act. And what essentially that means is, in practice, the minister has made a decision that is going to result in a mass population of undocumented Zimbabweans come June next year. He has, we don't believe that he's quite properly applied his mind to the extent of the population remaining without documentation come June next year.
Okay, but the minister's arguing, well, look, there is this window where permit holders can make their representations known, but you believe that that's not sufficient consultation with ZDP permit holders. HSF, the Helen Suzman Foundation, is arguing that there needs to be a transparent and fair consultation process. What the minister has put on the table is not satisfying those conditions as far as you're concerned.
No, not at all. And it really helps to clarify just a certain sort of terminological, a piece of terminology up front. The notion of fair consultation and allowing people to make representations in the language of the law really must precede the decision that is made. Now, the minister does speak a lot about his 12-month window that has now been extended, but that was part of his decision. So he made that decision with the 12-month window and the extension without any public consultation with the ZDP holders or the South African public. So I think the first point of clarity is to say that this consultation window is no replacement. Well, this window, it's not the consultation window, rather the window that the ZDP holders have been given to regularize themselves is no replacement for a consultation process. A consultation process that seeks representations from those affected by the decision precedes the decision. And that's not what the ZDP holders or South Africans at large have been given in this scenario. Then in terms of the time limit of the window, that is in some way a red herring in this debate, because the time limit won't matter for those who simply don't qualify for an alternative visa. Whether you have 12 months or 18 months and you happen to be a Zimbabwean permit holder who has lived in South Africa for 15 years and your job could in principle be done by a South African, you are going to face incredible hurdles at regularizing yourself under a formal visa. The reason why we have brought this on the grounds of consultation in the first place is that if the minister had gone to ZDP holders and he had formed a process by which their views and their realities could be appropriately communicated to them, time limits, regularization, meaningful opportunities to be able to stay in South Africa would all have been made clear to him. And he just hasn't done that. So the debate about what period is sufficient, whether there is a meaningful opportunity to regularize, and the impact of uprooting all these people from South Africa just hasn't been interrogated by the minister.
Yeah, and if you think of the employment profile of your average restaurant, whenever I go into a restaurant here in Joburg, mostly my service staff are Zimbabweans. Whenever I go into an Uber, more often than not, the driver is a Zimbabwean. So I think Zimbabwean permit holders are very deeply embedded in South Africa's economy and in our society, and they're paying taxes. They've paid for their permit applications in the first place as well. They are productive members of our society, and I think we must also think about the downside risks of if they all had to be expelled. What impact would that have on our local economy?
Precisely, and I think those downside risks are just not before the minister. The minister has plunged into this massive decision largely in the dark about that kind of data. The economic profile, the impact, the benefit for South Africans that the ZDP holder may have is clearly not before the minister, because he hasn't taken the time and effort to conduct the sort of impact assessment that would make the decision to cancel the ZDP rational.
All right, so Chris, this court date is set for the 5th to the 7th of October, but I've, in my reading around this, come across a news report out of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Observer, stating that there are rumors that the Home Affairs Minister Motsoaledi wants to push this court case out to next year. What would be the Helen Suzman Foundation's response to that potential eventuality?
I think on the issue of delaying any court proceedings further, we would be firmly against doing that. The court date has been in place for a while now. The minister has had the Helen Suzman Foundation's founding papers has had everyone's court papers for a while now. And I think that there's been ample time for the minister to prepare, and the Zimbabwean permit holders need a resolution to lead some certainty to their plight in South Africa. And I think we get that. The sooner we get that, the better.
Chris Fisher, thank you very much. Let's hand over to you, our audience. Are you a Zimbabwean exemption permit holder? How will this decision by Home Affairs Minister Motsoaledi affect you and your family? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.